No police, no prisons, no courtrooms, no lawyers. If someone stole from you 10,000 years ago, what happened to them? The answer is not what you expect, because ancient justice wasn't blind. It was brutal, public, and deeply personal. Here's what most people don't realize. For the vast majority of human history, there was no such thing as a criminal justice system. There were only two things: the community and the accused. In hunter-gatherer societies, if you broke the rules, stole food, attacked a member of the group, took someone else's mate, the tribe decided your fate. There was no appeal, no judge, no second chance. The group was the law. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer tribes, as windows into our past, found that punishments fell into three categories: shaming, exile, or death. Shaming came first. Public humiliation so severe that the offender could barely function in the group. Exile came second. Banishment from the tribe into the wilderness, which in most environments was effectively a death sentence. Death came third. Swift, final, communal. No one was locked in a cage, because cages didn't exist yet. Then, around 5,000 years ago, something changed. Cities appeared, populations grew, and suddenly, you couldn't just exile someone. There were too many people, too many strangers, too many crimes. You needed rules written down, rules everyone could see. The oldest known legal code in human history was written in Sumer, in modern-day Iraq, around 2100 BCE. It's called the Code of Ur-Nammu, and some of its punishments will shock you. Murder, death. Robbery, death. Rape, death. But here's what surprises historians. Some crimes in Ur-Nammu weren't punished with death. They were punished with fines. Silver, paid directly to the victim. If you cut off someone's foot, you paid 15 shekels of silver. If you broke someone's bone, 10 shekels. If you knocked out a tooth, 2 shekels. This was not mercy. This was economics. In a world without banks or insurance, the only way to compensate a victim was direct payment. Ancient justice wasn't about rehabilitation. It was about settling the debt. 400 years later, a Babylonian king named Hammurabi went further. He carved his laws into a massive stone pillar, 8 feet tall, and placed it in the center of the city where everyone could see it. This was the Code of Hammurabi, 282 laws, and almost all of them ended the same way. Death, death, death. The philosophy behind Hammurabi's code was simple. An eye for an eye. If a builder constructed a house that collapsed and killed the owner, the builder was put to death. If it killed the owner's son, the builder's son was put to death. If a doctor performed surgery and the patient died, the doctor's hands were cut off. The punishment had to match the crime. Exactly. Symmetrically. This seems monstrous to modern eyes, but in the ancient world, it was progress. Before written law, the powerful punished however they wanted. A rich man could destroy a poor man for any offense. A king could execute someone for looking at him wrong. Written law, for the first time, said, there are limits, even for kings. But for ordinary people, the punishments were physical and public. Flogging was common across nearly every ancient civilization. Egypt, Assyria, Greece, Rome, China, Persia. The number of lashes was calculated precisely. Too few and the message was lost. Too many and you'd kill the person, which wasn't always the goal. Public beatings served a double purpose. Punish one, warn everyone. Mutilation was even more deliberate. A thief's hand was cut off, so everyone could see for the rest of his life what he had done. A liar's tongue was removed. A rapist was castrated. The punishment wasn't just pain. It was a permanent mark, a label, carved into the body. But what happened when no one knew who was guilty? In the modern world, you gather evidence, run forensics, call witnesses. In the ancient world, you had a different tool entirely: the ordeal. If the evidence was unclear, many ancient cultures believed only the gods could determine guilt, and the gods spoke through pain. The most common was the river ordeal, practiced in ancient Mesopotamia for thousands of years. The accused was thrown into the river. If they drowned, guilty. The river, guided by divine will, had taken them. If they survived, innocent. The gods had protected them. This wasn't superstition to the people who practiced it. It was technology, the best truth detection system they had. In medieval Europe, similar ordeals involved fire. The accused carried a burning iron bar for 9 paces. Then their hand was bandaged. 3 days later, the bandage was removed. If the wound was healing cleanly, innocent. If infected, guilty. Great remarkable is that this may have worked more often than you'd think. People who knew they were guilty sometimes confessed rather than faced the ordeal. The ordeal itself was a bluff, and the guilty often folded. Ancient societies didn't have lie detectors, but they understood something modern interrogators still use. The threat of exposure is sometimes more powerful than the exposure itself. Here's a fact that most people find genuinely surprising. For most of human history, prisons did not exist. Not in the way we know them, not as places where people served long sentences. Ancient Egypt had holding cells, but only to detain someone until their punishment could be carried out. Ancient Greece had the same. Ancient Rome, too. You weren't sentenced to 5 years in prison. You were held for a few days, and then executed, fined, flogged, or enslaved. Slavery was often the punishment for serious crimes. In ancient Rome, a debtor who couldn't pay could be seized by his creditor and forced to work off the debt. In ancient Mesopotamia, an entire family could be enslaved if the father committed a serious offense. The concept of rehabilitation, the idea that punishment could change a person, barely existed. You weren't punished to become better. You were punished to pay back what you took, to deter others from trying the same. And sometimes, simply to suffer. The first true prison, a place where people were confined for extended periods as the punishment itself, didn't appear until the late 18th century in Europe. Before that, for 5,000 years of written civilization, the answer to crime was never lock them away and wait. It was always faster, more visible, more final. So what does all of this tell us about ancient humans? They weren't barbaric simply because they were ignorant. Many ancient punishments were calculated, deliberate, built around a coherent philosophy of what justice meant. To them, justice meant restoration, giving back what was taken. It meant deterrence, making others afraid to repeat the crime. And it meant visibility. Punishment had to be seen to work. A fine paid in private taught no one anything. A hand cut off in the public square taught an entire city. What ancient systems lacked wasn't intelligence. They lacked one belief that we now take for granted: that a human being, no matter what they've done, can change. That idea, rehabilitation, is less than 300 years old. For the other 50,000 years of human history, the philosophy was simpler. You break the law, you pay the price. Immediately, publicly, permanently. Whether that makes ancient humans more honest about human nature or simply more cruel depends on what you believe people are capable of. Either way, the next time you see a courtroom on television, a lawyer, a jury, a judge in a black robe, remember, that system is younger than the United States of America. And before it existed, for almost all of human history, justice looked very different. If this changed how you think about where we came from, subscribe. Next time, something else about ancient humans that will completely surprise you.